Hey guys, it's Reagan and today I'm here to film my top 13 of 2013. But before I get started, I just want to say this list was so difficult to make because I have read so many great books this year, and I've also just read a lot of books in general. I've read over 80 books, I want to say, so narrowing it down to 13 was pretty much impossible. But I did it and it's done. So let's get started with number 13, shall we? So number 13 on my list is going to be Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This book was just so adorable. And if you're not familiar with the story, it follows a main character named Kath, and she's starting her freshman year of college. And Kath writes fan fiction on the internet. So this book has this really interesting dichotomy of her being extremely shy and having a hard time finding a niche in college, but also being very active in the internet world. So overall, Kath is an extremely relatable character, and this book just made me like gush through the entire thing. It was just unbelievably cute. And really, I never thought I would have a contemporary on my top 13 of 2013, but that's just how good this book was. Number 12 on my list is gonna be Shatter Me and Unravel Me by Tahereh Mafi, as well as Destroy Me and Fracture Me, the novellas in this series. I read all 4 of those this year, and they are just unbelievably addicting. This is a dystopian series, and it follows a main character named Juliet. And Juliet is extremely interesting, and basically the first book follows her starting out in prison, and the thing with Juliet is her touch is lethal. She basically can't touch anyone or they die. And the thing that made me enjoy this book so much, besides Warner, is the beautiful and poetic writing style. It's very unique. It has a stream of consciousness feeling to it, so it's really her thoughts. And the cool thing about it is it's written through her perspective, and as she changes her mind about something, she'll literally cross it out in the text. So it's just really, really unique and something I really enjoyed, and I cannot wait for the last book of the series, Ignite Me, that's coming out in February. Oh my gosh, can't even handle it. Number 11 on my list is going to be The Darkest Minds and Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken. This is another dystopian series that I read and extremely enjoyed this year. The series follows a main character named Ruby, and she lives in a world where basically a disease happened and it killed the majority of children, and the children that did survive were mutated by this disease. And the adults became so afraid of these children that they basically rounded them all up and put them in concentration camps. This book series is an extremely action-packed series, and so fast-paced and so addicting, and the characters are extremely lovable, and it's just amazing. And yes. Number 10 on my list is going to be House of Hades by Rick Riordan. This is the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and it was amazing. It was so much fun to read. I honestly could not put it down. The tricky thing about this book is I can't really tell you anything about it without spoiling like the entire thing. However, I will just say it was fantastic, and if you haven't read the first Percy Jackson book, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, just do it and start it because it's great. I promise, it was. Okay. Number 9 on my list is going to be Crimson Crown by Cinda Williams Chima. This is the 4th and final book of the Seven Realms series, and this series is one of my favorite young adult high fantasy novels. And because this is the last one, I'll tell you a bit about the first one. The first one is called The Demon King by Cinda Williams Chima, and it's a really addicting high fantasy novel that has a joint perspective. It follows a thief and thug lord named Han Alistair, as well as a princess named Reza Anna Maria, and basically how their worlds collide and how a whole bunch of stuff happens, and it's cray, guys. It's just cray, but it is so, so good. Number 8 on my list is The House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer. This has to be one of the best written young adult books I have actually ever read. It is so good, and this book follows a main character named Matt. He lives in the country Opium. It's set in the future, and he is a clone of a very, very wealthy drug lord named El Patron. This book follows Matt's story and basically how he struggles with what it means to be human, his life, and quite honest, it's just really, really beautifully written and very well done, and I loved it very, very much. Number 7 on my list is gonna be Ruins by Orson Scott Card. This is the 2nd book in the Pathfinder series by Orson Scott Card, and this book is just cray. It is so cray. And again, I will tell you the premise of the first one because obviously this is the second one. The first one is called Pathfinder, and it follows a main character named Rig, and Rig can see paths of basically any living thing from the past. So he can kind of see what has gone through an area just by staring. He just sees paths of things. And the series itself is a very cool sci-fi fantasy mix, and I also will have to say this. I have read a lot of young adult books in my existence, in my lifetime, and this book series does things that I honestly can say I never saw coming. So it was extremely refreshing in that regard, and it was so good, and I'm so excited for the next book in this book series. Number 6 on my list is a cult favorite here on the booktube, and it's just for good reason, honestly. And that is going to be Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is the 3rd book in the Infernal Devices trilogy, and the feels from this book. The feels, I still am not over it. It has been like 6 months or 7 months since it's come out, and I'm still not over it. Overall, this book series was just amazing, and personally I found the Infernal Devices trilogy to be way better than the Mortal Instruments. It is my favorite by far, and this book wrapped up the series beautifully. Just beautifully. There's no other way to describe it besides just beautifully. Yep. Number 5 on my list is gonna be More Than This by Patrick Ness, and oh my gosh, this book is just so freaking good. First of all, before I even get into the premise, the writing in this book is just insane. It's just insane. It's just so amazing. Patrick Ness is a freaking genius. This book, though, follows a main character named Seth, and he is dead. That is not a spoiler. He dies quite violently in the very first chapter of this book. But what happens is, after he dies, he wakes up in his old neighborhood, and is completely abandoned, and he wakes up in this neighborhood naked, and he has no idea what is going on. So this book is Seth trying to figure out what's going on, as well as explore his life before he died and find out his own existence and come to terms with his own self. It's beautiful. It's extremely beautiful. It's just great, and I highly recommend anyone reading it, and it's a standalone, so that's always a plus for a lot of people. Number 4 on my list is a staple on my channel, and a lot of you probably will not be surprised to see it, and that is going to be Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. I read both of these books this year, and I love them so much. I can't even describe how my love for this book series, but I'll try to. Throne of Glass follows an assassin named Selena Saradossian. I believe that's how you say her name. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce anything. And basically, in the first novel, Selena is in prison, and basically she makes a deal with the prince to become his champion in a competition to become the assassin of the realm. She does this basically because it guarantees her freedom, so she does everything in these books to get her freedom. I love this book series so much because, one, Selena is such a boss. She is such a great female protagonist lead. She is the strongest, the coolest, the funniest. She's not afraid to do her. You know what I mean? Like, she's not reliant on anyone. She's reliant on herself. You know, it's just inspirational in that way. As well as just the series overall. I will say Crown of Midnight compared to Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight is leagues better than Throne of Glass. That's because Throne of Glass is designed to be sort of the setup of this massive book series. It's going to be 6 books as of now. And so this is mostly like a world building book to kind of set the foundation for everything that's going to happen in later books like Crown of Midnight. So we keep that in mind, but the transition from really good to awesome is smooth and quite enjoyable, I may add. So yes, these guys are number 4 on my list. Now we're moving into the nitty-gritty, top 3, so let's just jump right in. Number 3 on my list is another Patrick Ness novel. I'm telling you guys, Patrick Ness is like my favorite author, but moving on, and that is the Chaos Walking Trilogy. I read all of these over the summer, and they are absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. So beautiful. Just to give you a premise, the first book is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, and it follows a main character named Todd. And Todd lives on a settlement on a planet called Prentice Town. and Todd lives in a world where all the women are dead and everybody can hear everybody else's thoughts. On the eve of his upcoming birthday that would deem him to be a man, a lot of events happen that forces Todd to go on the journey of his life, and it is awesome. I personally view the Chaos Walking trilogy to be this really, just beautifully written story, but it kind of reminds me a lot of Huckleberry Finn in a way. Namely because Todd, our main character, goes on a spiritual, moral, and literal journey much like Huckleberry Finn. And it's just so good. It's just so good. And this book series houses my favorite villain of all time, the Mayor. I honestly just want everyone to read it because I think everyone would like it. It's just so poetic and so beautiful, and I can't even handle it any longer, so let's just move on. Number 2 on my list could really be number 1 if I had read the entire series this year, but I only had time to read the first one. That book is The Final Empire, Mistborn, Book 1 by Brandon Sanderson. This book is crazy good. It is like Ocean's 11 meets fantasy. It's just fantastic. To give you background, because this has a rather complicated background, so I'm just going to jump right into that. This book takes place in a world called the Final Empire, and the Final Empire is a desolate world that has basically been surviving the reign of the 1,000 year reign of the Dark Lord, who is an evil dictator, and the world is desolate, all the plants are brown, and within this world there are 2 types of people and 2 types of people only, the Ska and the nobility. The Ska are slaves treated basically as cattle, and the nobility in this book have the ability to potentially inherit through bloodlines, through birth, the ability, a type of magic, and the magic system in this book is referred to as allomancy. And allomancy is the use of metal to do magic. And there's 2 different types of allomancers. There's mistlings and mistborns. Mistlings can only use 1 type of metal, whereas mistborns can use all types of metal. So basically those types of people consume the metals, burn through them. It is so cool how that even happens. The story though follows about 6 people and their plans to overthrow the Dark Lord and the Final Empire. It's craziness, and it is epic, and this book probably has one of the best endings I have ever read in my entire life. So there's that. It was so good. So good. Okay, moving on. And we've gone to number 1 on my list, and number 1 should not be a surprise, honestly. That's the Codex Alera by Jim Butcher. Yes. The Codex Alera, I read the entire 6-book series this year, and the first one is The Furies of Calderon, and I have talked about this book ceaselessly, endlessly on my channel, but guess what? I'm about to tell you what it's about again. So the first book, Furies of Calderon, centers around our main character named Tabby. Tabby lives in a world called Alera, and in Alera, people have control over things called Furies. Furies are manifestations of elements, so there's wind, water, ground, grass, forest, fire, metal furies that people can control. But our main character Tabby does not have control over any furies, so he has to use his intelligence, etc. to save the day. That's the premise of the first book. This book series is massive, and I will say in terms of books, Furies of Calderon is probably the worst one, but it's still epic. You know what I mean? It sets the foundation for the craziness that ensues in this book series, and Tabby himself has probably one of the best character arcs I've ever seen. The first book he starts out about 15 years old, and at the end of the book series he's in his mid to late 20s and has completely it's great to see the growth that has happened there. As well, overall, I'll say this series is great if you are interested in getting into adult fantasy, but you're scared about maybe the pace, the length, being confused, or just be too dense for you. This book series is a great place for you to start because it's action-packed and not difficult to follow. It is just great from page 1. So yes, Furies of Calderon, Codex Alera is number 1. Surprise! Alrighty guys, there is my top 13 of 2013. It was a lovely reading year. I'm so happy I joined BookTube. Random segue. Anyway, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!